This episode of the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast is brought to you by Patreon and the Gentleman Scofflaw merchandise page. Go to gentlemanscofflaw.com. In the menu, click the support or shop links to help support the show.
You are listening to the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast. Listener beware.
Rise and shine, the liquor store is open. I ain't got time for moping. I best be on my way. Well, I still got time to save my reputation. Time to go day drinking in this dirty little town.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast, the podcast for the rebel and the Renaissance man. I'm your host, Jordan Crowder, and joining with me, as always, from the Great White North is Johnny Boy.
Hello.
And filling in for the Don Fowler is our good friend and residential therapist, Eric E-Rock Anderson. How you doing?
Hey, great. What's going on, guys? Glad to be back with you again.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. You're one of our favorite guests from us, the guys on the podcast, and our listeners. So,
that's good.
Yeah,
I was worried I freaked everyone out getting into the depths talking about, sex, pornography, all that. But you know what? We made it out on the other end, so we're okay, apparently.
Yeah.
You said sex.
Yeah. Like all of Eric's people that he counsels are gonna hear this and go, "Oh gosh,
I know. I'm gonna lose my clients after this.
Never take this guy seriously ever
I'm
again."
Get fired. He goes on a podcast with those guys. No,
I know. It's terrible.
This guy.
We've burned a lot of bridges for a lot of people, I think.
They're scoffing laws over there.
Let's start off with a little bit of housekeeping, like we always do. I am drinking some KBC pumpkin beer in my Yeti, my little Yeti koozie. So there we go.
That looks nice.
Well, if we learned anything from our resident brewery, Peter, a few weeks ago, he said the pumpkin stuff was out.
I know, and I think it is
sweet potato this year.
Oh man, I didn't find any. I actually looked for some, but I was only at Trader Joe's. What do you guys got going on?
I have nothing.
Nothing. Okay. How about you, Eric?
I would love to be joining you for a drink, but I am at work in between sessions right now, so I have a lovely cup of coffee made from our Keurig in the office here.
I feel like old-timey therapists probably had alcohol between sessions.
Yeah, probably. I mean, a bit of scotch or bourbon or something. I could see it.
It would probably make some of the sessions might go over a little easier if you.
Well, especially some of the old timey therapists was just like, you come on the couch and talk for an hour, and I just kind of sitting on my head, and then you pay me. You can easily get away with that.
Oh yeah.
But no, I try and engage with my clients more than that.
You try and listen to them, give them their money's worth.
Yeah, make them feel like they're actually talking to someone, not just like, okay.
Little preview later on the show. I always forget to do this in the beginning. We have Walker Lamond, the author of Rules for My Unborn Son, which will be a lot of fun.
All right.
I think my parrot just started piping in. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but that's embarrassing.
Your female parrot?
Yeah, our female parrot. She can be touchy sometimes. She doesn't like me very much. She likes Lacey, but for me, she hisses at all the time. I don't know what the deal is.
Lacey's a bit more approachable than you. That's why.
Yeah, literally when she walks, I'll be sitting at home working all night, and Lacey might go out with friends or something, and she'll come back, and she'll be sitting in the corner of her cage the entire time, sulking, sleeping, whatever she does. And then as soon as Lacey walks in the door, she's wide awake and running around the cage, and it's really weird.
It's weird to hear you call it a she.
I know, isn't it? Now it is.
You've had it for how many years? Have you had this thing?
4 years.
In 4 years, it's always been Ernie the he, and now it's
Ernie the
changed.
she. It's Ernesta, but we just still call her Ernie. It's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. What's going on in your week, John?
Well, I came across. Okay, remember back in the day we recorded that what was it called? The Campus Boys. How many years ago was that? A dozen years ago?
This is it was basically a pilot presentation for MTV.
Yeah.
And it was very much like the Impractical Jokers, but on college campuses.
So when we were filming that, if you watch it on YouTube, there's an opening scene where we're in a fountain.
Yeah.
Right? And when we were in that fountain, I found a flash drive. Not a flash drive, but a memory card for a camera.
Oh, yeah.
And I just held on to it. I had no way of checking what was on. I didn't have the device or anything. And I came across it this week, and my new computer has a slot for it. And it's got a bunch of family pictures from someone's Christmas.
Really?
Yeah.
That is so creepy, John.
I know. But I feel like these people might want to see these, pictures.
You're like Robin Williams in 24-hour photo. Or whatever was it? 1 hour photo?
1 hour photo.
You're just like, oh man. Gosh, the creepiest thing about that, and I think Eric will appreciate this as a therapist, was that shot of him in the people's house just on the toilet with the door open.
Yeah. If you want a good psychopath cinematography there. Remember last time Donovan was looking for the definition of a sociopath or psychopath? There you go.
Yeah, that would be it. Oh, just using somebody's home bathroom with total disregard of of privacy. That's crazy. I have a friend that found years ago a DVD on the side of the road, and it was this girl's is it bat mitzvah? What's the girl's version? Bat mitzvah.
Yeah.
And it was like this lavish, crazy bat mitzvah that he used to watch with his friends all the time when people would come over, because it was so crazy. It was just like this video of this person's. And so I feel like that's your bat mitzvah. This was.
Well, to be fair, I've only looked at them once.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
So, but to be even more fair, I only found it yesterday. So,
there you go. Well, maybe with all the new was it face recognition stuff now with Google, you could find out who it belongs to.
Oh, there you go.
They're probably because this was back before the cloud, right? They're probably they probably wondered whatever happened to those photos.
Or maybe they were trying to get rid of them and they thought a fountain was a good place.
It's true. I never thought
it's probably like a red dragon type of guy that, if you ever saw that movie.
Red Dragon?
The red. That's how he'd find his next victims was through a video service transferring old movies to DVD.
I thought you were going to say finding pictures in fountains.
That would work.
Took a leap.
What happened? Well, I guess I know what happened in Eric's week. We were talking about this earlier. For my birthday, Eric got me tickets to go see a band that I used to be into, and Eric used to be into in high school, called Five Iron Frenzy. Do you remember them, John? At all?
No.
John followed me all through my punk phase, but John stayed the same. I went through a punk phase as a teenager, and they're actually a lot of fun to see live. I mean, you had fun, right, Eric?
Oh, totally. Yeah, they're total goofballs, and it was fun. It was definitely. I mean, when we were talking afterwards, the whole night, it's because they were a band that were I absolutely loved throughout high school and still do now, but they broke up for. What was it? They broke up in 2008 and then just got back together just a couple of years ago. And so the whole crowd was a bunch of people who, were in high school last time they saw them, and now we're all old with kids again trying to go skank in the mosh pit and can't keep up.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience, because I remember, and John has gone to a lot of these shows with me. We'd go to see MXPX, or I don't know. We saw so many bands back in the
I got
day.
my first black eye at an MXPX concert.
Yeah. And it wasn't even a cool story. It was just a friend of ours from the youth group who got a little too excited and jumped up and clocked them in the face with her head.
With her forehead, yeah.
With her forehead, yeah. It was a much older crowd. There was not a person under 30 in this entire crowd.
Well, the band before, I thought it was super funny. The band before Squad 5-0, who I didn't know a ton of their music back in high school, but I'd heard them and heard a song or two. They had a song called "We Are the Youth," and the guy had to dedicate it to everyone's kids because he's like, "We're too old to be singing this song, but we all have kids now."
Yeah. Well, it was funny to see kids at a show like that too. Like,
Yeah.
there was like, people had their little kids holding
They're like
them on their
6-year-olds.
shoulders.
And, yeah.
It's crazy. It makes me wonder, is punk dead? I don't know. Is the new generation going to carry the torch, or is it just that niche crowd of for Five Iron Frenzy that is going to stay older like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've always had like a super loyal fan base, so they'll be a group that I think will stay with that. But yeah, is the scene going to be as big as it once was? I don't know.
I don't know. What do you think, John?
I thought I had a thought. I realized I don't.
It's funny because you, Eric, you played in multiple bands growing up. I played in a band. John was our security guard at all of our shows.
A very bad one at that.
I know. You let that one kid, Frank Scofflaw, who was our bassist's drummer that was always trying to cause crap. He always somehow got backstage, and we're like, John, you got to keep an eye on this kid.
And ironically, he's doing quite well with his band now.
He is.
So maybe I had some small part.
Well, I don't think he plays music anymore, but he was doing Blessed by a Broken Heart. He was their drummer for a long
grasping
time.
at straws here, man.
You know what we got to do? You know what it's time for?
Listener mail.
It's time for listener mail, but this is a special listener mail. This is listener mail Ask a Therapist edition, because we've got Eric here with us. We might as well kill two birds with one stone, right? For those of you that listen to the show, you can interact with us on social media. You could send us an email on our website, or you could call us at man81scoff and leave a voicemail. I've got a couple questions that people sent anonymously through email that they wanted to get answered. You want to answer them, Eric?
Sure.
All right, you read the first one, John.
Okay. Where is Waldo?
That's not a question.
That's not a question.
All right,
That's
let me
John
spin
being
the mic.
silly.
Are we being?
My cousin used to circle Waldo in the books so he could find him easier next time.
That's such a
He was
jackass
that
thing to
kid who
do.
ruined the books for everyone in the daycare.
What
Yeah,
a
where's
moron.
Waldo? I'd want to start looking through it, and then all the Waldos would just be circled. I'm like, this is
No, that sucks.
Okay, the real question. What advice does Eric have for spouses of those in public service type fields like teaching, social work, etc., specifically as it comes to self-care? My wife is a teacher in a school of predominantly lower socioeconomic class students, many of whom have had a rough upbringings. As someone who is very caring, she's had trouble in the past taking too much of her students' struggles onto herself, leaving her emotionally and mentally exhausted, which in turn can put stress on our marriage. What can I do as a husband to help her manage that burden appropriately? Or is it time to seek out a counselor or pastor versed in dealing with these situations? Thanks in advance.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question, and I think something like a lot of people deal with, especially like looking at helping professions and things where, so like that situation as a school teacher in a lower socioeconomic school district, it's definitely going to be easy to take a lot of that on, particularly if she's got a empathetic personality who cares a lot about people, which is, I mean, awesome that your wife does that.
Yeah.
But I think knowing your boundaries and limits, and because so many of the issues in that type of setting that you're going to be dealing with are so much bigger than one person can deal with. She's there to make an impact with the people who she can impact. And I'm sure she's doing amazing work. At least it sounds like it from the way you put the question together. And so in response to the actual question, like, what can you do to help her out? Like, I would just encourage her to look at what her needs are. Look at, is there times where she's overextended? Are there times where, she's exhausted, she's coming home, she's not able to, stay connected or be present with, you and your family, and how that might be getting in the way. Because if she's more connected and she's taking care of herself more, she's actually going to be more able to do her work better and be able to help people more. I think knowing your own boundaries and limits is huge. Now, if there's an issue that's getting in the way, that's keeping it from like, okay, I know I need to set boundaries and limits, and I try to, but I can't seem to do that or sustain that. That's where you might want to look at a counselor, or pastor, or someone to help process why am I struggling so much with that.
Oh, that makes sense. And
I just realized why it's so good that I didn't go into being a therapist of any sort. I would have suggested picking up bricklaying. It pays better and bricks don't have feelings.
Terrible advice, John. Terrible advice.
I know.
It'll work for some people, but that's awesome.
But yeah, I guess it's better to have a wife who cares than doesn't care, right? So it's like it's a good characteristic, exaggerated in a sense, I would think.
Well, I look at it like, the superhero type thing, you learn to control your superpowers, or your superpowers will control you, So it's like being empathetic it's a great thing, but if you're, if you don't know how to shift into like giving that same care to yourself, then you're going to be depleted by this really good quality that you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's go to this next question. We have, Dear Therapist Eric, I've been with my girlfriend for almost 9 years and we have 2 kids. Couldn't be happier. For some reason, I have a dream about my old girlfriend, who I haven't seen in 10 years, at least twice a month. Always something mundane like doing groceries or something. It's really annoying and leaves me with a bad feeling of longing. Help? Question mark.
Yeah, the help question mark. Maybe. I don't know. Like I would want to know, like, is there are there other thoughts coming up of this girl? Is there, and is the ex like still circling on your mind? Something like, you're working to try and let go of. I mean, trying to let go of. It sounds like, from the way the question's worded, it couldn't be happier. It's just a thought that's coming up, and, it may mean nothing. Every once in a while, I think it's normal to have just an ex or people from our past, like, will come to mind, and it's just, okay, that was there. And then it kind of, it sounds like he's annoyed by it. And if it's really stressing you out, then like, or really causing problems. But I almost wonder the way it's worded of like, waking up with a bad feeling of longing, like, am I guilty for having this thought or this dream? It's just a thought. If it's like turning into obsession, or you can't, get that off your mind, then that might be something to, call someone about, or, process through.
Have you, do you ever have it in your therapy sessions? Do people like complain about like spouses having dreams about them doing something bad and then they wake up mad?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
Oh man,
Especially like
that. Like I had a friend that was always complaining about that. He was like, and I mean, like, I'm not going to.
Yeah, I
reveal
had
his
a
name.
friend that complained about that too.
No,
what are you doing in Lacey's dreams, Jordan?
Yeah, but seriously, he was like, and it became part of his stand-up act. But it was like, I mean, it seems kind of irrational to act that way, but I don't know.
Well, it's because what happens is like you wake up from the dream, or someone will wake up from the dream, and you're still in the emotions of it. So I wake up and I'm upset, and you're in those emotions when you wake up, and it's not rational to the situation, but that's what you're feeling at the time. So it's like, I'm mad at you for what you just did. And, I find for the most part people will kind of come down from that.
Yeah.
Although I hear that a lot with, couples and things I've worked with. And like, it's, if there's an active like infidelity issue we're going through, and then it comes up, that is just like, I can't believe you did stuff, but that's its own rabbit trail. We won't go down right now.
I think my favorite answer to that I heard from a friend was, she woke up and my friend said, but it was a dream. And she said, but you still did it. You can't argue with that.
You can't. You cannot argue with that. All right. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back with Walker Lamond, author of Rules for My Unborn Son. Scofflaws, I wanted to take a second to talk to you about Patreon. Now, if you've never heard of Patreon, basically it's a platform for creators, for patrons who are fans of a given creator to help support their creations. So we have a Patreon page for the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast. You could support the show for as little as $1 an episode, which is like what? This is just cheaper than a Starbucks coffee, right? So maybe give up one. Why does everyone always do that? They say it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. Okay, what else do you spend $1 on? Maybe it's cheaper than buying Q-tips. Maybe you don't need Q-tips for the month. Maybe this month you avoid Q-tips, right? I don't know. I mean, I hear they're bad for you anyway, but maybe that's not true. I don't. Maybe don't sacrifice anything related to health for the $1 an episode. But Patreon is great because you, the patron, also gets rewards for joining the Patreon. So examples of stuff that we have are extended interviews and outtakes, stuff that gets cut out of the episode that you don't hear for time's sake, because we try to keep a tight, entertaining show, and sometimes there is some gold that doesn't make the final cut. So you get to listen to some of that. Also, you get behind-the-scenes videos, photos, and bonus episodes. For example, we did a bonus episode at the Big Shave West, which was a lot of fun. So more of those type of things are coming, as well as monthly live video hangouts where you can interact with us in person, which is a lot of fun. We've done a couple of free ones to test it out, and it's been a lot of fun. We get to talk with the listeners in real time and get to know them, and they get to ask questions, and it's always a good time. And here's the pièce de résistance is when we hit our goal mark, we are launching a whole new movie review podcast, a Gentleman Scofflaw movie review podcast. Since we're all of us on the show are writers and filmmakers, and that's our background. We love movies. We're going to go through a catalog of what we think are either gentleman or Scofflaw-esque movies. So if you join, you'll get that show as well. Everyone who joins on Patreon at any one of the tiers, even at the $1 an episode, gets a free Gentleman Scofflaw vinyl sticker, which is super cool. It's like a full color sticker. It's really sticky. You could stick it on, anything you want to stick it on. Also, you'll get thanked on the air for your support. So check out patreon.com/gentscofflaw, or you could go to gentlemanscofflaw.com and click the support link on our menu, and it'll take you right there. We look forward to seeing you on Patreon, and thank you for supporting the show. All right, I'm excited to have this guest. I've been following him since when gosh, I'm trying to remember when the blog started, but we'll talk about that. I used to follow him when his book was a blog, before it was a book. Author Walker Lamond, thank you for coming on. How you doing? Yeah, I know we've been going back and forth over the last couple of months, but it's great that we finally linked up. And I love your work, I've been following it for a while. So we'll just chat about it. For people that don't know you, just give us a little introduction for our listeners. Who is Walker Lamond? What does he do?
Yeah, well, you were right on. I mean, it feels like forever ago, but I started this Tumblr in 2009, which to me seems like yesterday because I'm a little older probably than you guys. But in internet years, it's like a millennium ago.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, honestly, I think I was probably one of like the first 50 actual Tumblr sites.
Yeah.
because I remember there were 10 of us, and we were all picks of the month, at the same time. I remember I would get 5 hits, and the president of Tumblr would email me, be like, "Great work, you're doing great, thanks."
But yeah, that was fun. And then since then, of course, I've disappeared into hiding because my fame became just overwhelming.
You became a hermit. You became like I don't know who's a hermit nowadays. No, Mel Gibson. I don't know. That's a bad reference.
Disappeared in obscurity.
So your blog was called was it 1001 Rules for My Unborn Son originally?
Yeah, that was it.
And
that was it.
Yeah, so I was a Tumblr junkie back then, and I mean, I didn't really do much with mine, but I used to log in there and just scroll through all of them. And it's funny. I started.
Fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun. I guess it's still up there because I still have my account and I auto post stuff to it all the time, but I never log into it. But I remember following that around the same time as like The Art of Manliness came out, and they were both kind of similar, had a similar aesthetic and similar kind of content. But yeah,
Brett's amazing. Brett McKay from Art of Manliness. He's amazing. He's done incredible things with his site. Smart guy. I don't know when that guy sleeps. He puts up so much content, but yeah, those were heady times back then. I mean, I'd had this idea, and it was just kind of like the back of a barroom napkin idea for a book, and then the idea of like writing letters to agents and trying to get published seemed so crazy. And I remember getting an email from a friend of mine who was kind of like an super early blogger. He had a blog called Golden Fiddle, which was great. It was like early TMZ celebrity. It was just very early blog. But
cool.
He was like, there's this new thing called Tumblr. It's really easy. You don't even have to know how to code. You just drop stuff right into it. And I remember going to Tumblr for the first time being like, this is so easy. Like, I don't have to know anything about WordPress or internet, anything. And yeah. At that point, I'd already aged out of probably the median age of internet people and bloggers and stuff like that. I mean, I was already, out of college and getting married. So Tumblr was like perfect. And then like those first couple of years of Tumblr, and this was like the very beginnings of kind of menswear stuff and vintagey throwback themes. And we were all just, it was so funny. I felt like I met all these people, but never actually met them. They were all just these little internet connections and all these little personalities. And it was fun. Yeah, we'd sit and scroll all morning. It was like Instagram or, Anyway, I haven't been on Tumblr in years, but I kind of owe everything to Tumblr. They really, they kind of launched me. It was cool.
Yeah, it was super cool. So let's talk about Rules for My Unborn Son. I mean, what was the genesis of that? Like, what made you want to write these rules? How did it all start?
To be honest, I had just finished kind of my post-college decade in New York, and I'd gotten married, and I was looking to start a family, and I just said, I kind of wanted to write a book, and I said, it would be funny if I wrote a parenting book for myself before I had a kid. That was the idea. I mean, it was just kind of like a funny, it was like a way to journal kind of my parenting experience. But I had lost my dad when I was in college, and, I had always saw him as someone who had a lot of wisdom, or, for better, for worse, and all these kind of old school rules. And I thought, I should write all these down because, he's not going to be around to tell them to my kid. And so it was just this way of, I'll record all this kind of family institutional knowledge for my kid. And it was kind of like a journaling project, But then I realized, like, this is kind of funny, I could make this kind of an ironic, funny twist on like the old-fashioned etiquette books, which I actually grew up with, like my mom's family, they were kind of that old school, like, don't use the shrimp fork for your salad. I kind of grew up with a lot of old etiquette rules, but I wasn't like a fuddy-duddy. I'd gone through all the phases of teenage rebellion, and then as I was having my own kid, I realized, oh, geez, a lot of that stuff I kind of want to remember, or a lot of the stuff my dad taught me. So I just decided to write it down. I mean, I think I probably had it in like a little spiral notebook for a year or two. And then, like I said, Tumblr came around. I was like, oh, look at that. I don't even have to write a book. I'll just put it on the internet and see what happens. And it was perfect because I said, I had a lot of it written, but I said, I'll just start by putting like a little up a day. And it was like doing stand up or something. It was like testing out material, writing a book is tough because I've done that since. And it's like, you're putting like all of your material in one basket and putting it out in the world and going, geez, I hope people like it.
Yeah.
But with blogging, you could test out material, so I'd put a little up and people would like it. And I'd be like, oh, that's good. And it would inspire you to do more. And then, and it was great. It gave me a little momentum. And then plus, as obviously I built up a little, I don't want to say audience. It was more just like a little kind of community of like little insiders group of people that had even heard of it. And that was great. So then when I did kind of realize I had enough content to make an actual physical book, I could go to publishers and be like, look, I already have people that read this. They like it. They press the little heart and they comment. And that was, we're talking really early in the era of using the internet to test market stuff. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's such a given now that like, you probably can't even get a publishing deal if you don't have 10,000 Instagram followers or, you do it. You probably can't even get a job in McDonald's. They're probably like, oh, but how's your social media following? But back then this was like totally brand new. I went to publishers and bragged about having 3,000 followers on Tumblr, and they were like, holy moly, that's great. This guy's a star. It was true. Like pre-viral times, but it was awesome. It was like, for me, it was like testing ground. I wish it was always could be that easy. That time's already gone. It's already like the window's closed.
Well, it's funny too, because like I've seen how that's affected too, like as coming from a filmmaking background, like independent films now, you see Kickstarter used a lot to raise funds, which is really cool. But then the studios are starting to use it as a tool now, where they're like, well, see how much you can get on Kickstarter, and we'll do the rest. So you're starting to see or a couple of years ago, like Zach Braff and these guys that like have established careers on Kickstarter, and it's like, well, that time's gone now, and that'll never be a thing again.
I know. For every step in kind of technology or even like art technology that democratizes your business, makes it easier to do, gives access to more people. For every time you make that positive step, honestly, like there are these little windows of opportunity, and then they are either quickly monetized or essentially just you're making it even harder for yourself. Ultimately it's a good thing. It's a good thing when more people have access to the tech and they can, compete in a larger marketplace. And there's that little teeny window of time when all of a sudden some amateur can compete with the big guys. But then when the big guys catch up and say, oh, wow, we can use Facebook and social media too, then all of a sudden you're back to competing against the big guys. Right. But it's okay, I think. I still think that it's that incremental progress. It's kind of like the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's still good, because I came up as a teenager in the 90s dreaming of, being Kevin Smith and Spike Lee, and taking a 16mm camera out in Brooklyn and making a movie. And then when I got up to New York and realized that's fucking impossible, you just can't do it. You can't. Yeah. I couldn't afford 3 minutes of Tri-X black and white 16mm film, let alone rent some airy camera. It was just totally impossible. Yeah. And then people are like, oh, you can use a video camera. I'm like, yeah, if you want it to look like shit. And so I remember the first huge step for indie filmmakers back then was the iMac.
Oh yeah.
I got my first kind of one of those see-through iMacs.
Oh yeah, with the multicolored back on it.
And it's it was all of a sudden you didn't have to use Avid. And that was such a game changer. But it was still made it really, really hard to, it was still difficult. Yeah. But anyways, nowadays, Jesus, I wish I was 17 years old right now, because now literally their only limit is what you can imagine or write. I mean, you could shoot a feature on an iPhone, no problem. I mean, I was just listening to a podcast with the dude. Sorry, I'm rambling on.
No, that's fine.
The guy, the guy who made the movie Tangerine, he shot it all on an iPhone.
Oh yeah. It was like an iPhone 5 too. So it's like now that was a crappy camera.
Wasn't even a good camera back. Anyway, now his next feature's in 35 millimeter, but
so he just went the other way on that. But but I mean, you're talking about how it was right timing and stuff, but the content is really good on your blog. Like you're not giving yourself enough credit on that side of things. I feel like that the good content still does get through. It's just harder for it to get through nowadays. There's a bunch of people that are trying to do it, and it's all like you just have to sort through a lot of crap to get to the good stuff. That's the main difference, I think, with the technology.
I agree. I mean, even when I started my blog, I remember thinking, and this was actually the genius of Tumblr too. At that point, blogs and the internet was like really messy. It was still really messy.
For sure.
I mean, people who consider themselves bloggers were still writing like 1,000-word text entries on like a WordPress site. Like it wasn't visual yet. You know what I'm saying? It was still very, diary oriented. Anyway, so I remember thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to keep it like really simple, like really visual. So I wanted like super clean text and like, and I thought of it like a mixtape, like making like a really good mix. People don't even make mixes anymore; they call them playlists, right? but like I remember I was thinking like I'm DJing a party. It's like give them a couple fun rules, and then a nice picture, and then a song, and then a quote, then a couple rules and a picture and song. And I was really thinking about the rhythm of it. It probably comes from like editing movies because that's kind of what I had always done, and I wanted it to be visual like that, like like the old you remember the old tear off daily calendars? I don't know if you guys even remember those as kids. We used to get them as kids all the time. You'd get like these Far Side cartoons,
Far Side cartoons, all the stealth comics.
Yeah.
And I got to say, the brilliance of those was that it was not too much information at one time, right? So it was just kind of, and I liked that idea of the Tumblr being like these clean entries, and I thought I really kind of wanted to lay it out like a cool magazine, which you just never could have. It was the first time you could really do this. I mean, we had done zines and stuff, and you're at the photocopier and
MySpace.
But all of a sudden, you had this self-publishing software that was free, and it was so beautiful. I mean, the first few templates on Tumblr were so simple and so beautiful. It was really amazing, and it kind of really freed you to just kind of write good content. And my favorite part, dig Google Images for awesome photos.
Yeah.
You got also, this was at a time when Google Images was just exploding. Like all of a sudden you could type in David Bowie young, and you'd have all these beautiful photos that you'd never seen before, because up until then, unless you had a bunch of cool rock books, you didn't have these photos, or unless you were like a total music nerd and you had collected old Cream magazines and stuff.
Yeah.
You've never seen this. So being able to like use the internet to curate this photo magazine, I almost saw it more as like a photography magazine than anything else. The content was fun, but it was kind of like, the blurbs in an Esquire magazine. It was like, you're just something to read while you turn to the next ad,
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so anyway, I was really into the visual aspect of it all. And I mean, I appreciate you saying the content was good. I mean, that I was trying to be funny and all that stuff too.
Well,
but the part that really made me have fun was like making it look cool, finding cool pictures, and like also like, sharing with people who I thought were cool,
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Poindexter and John Lennon and old movie stars and Cary Grant and stuff like that. It was fun.
Well,
it's such an interesting concept to think about, like just the blog and just the medium you're sharing on as like the aesthetics behind it, and how that was such a big part of it for you. I've never thought of like a blog, particularly with how schizophrenic MySpace got at a time.
Pimp my
as
profile.
like a minimalist artistic thing.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I don't know how much this affected the kind of experience of going to my blog or whatever, but like I made a decision early on that I wasn't going to make money off this. Like I wasn't going to put ads on it, and I wasn't going to clutter the space with like other people's content, like I really loved the community of Tumblr, and I was like always trying to like other people's stuff and encourage people's blogs and stuff like that. But I didn't want my site to be like, oh, and here's like all these ads and here's this blog roll on the side. And I just, because I didn't really care at that point. I mean, I had a job. This was just for fun. So that actually freed me up to just really make it pretty, and not worry about big flashing banners and all that junk.
Right.
That was great when we could finally make site because Tumblr was free, right? So you don't have to worry about, oh, I better put ads on the top so I can pay my bill.
Well, and I feel like the site very much kind of captures the spirit of like even our show. We talk about like the idea of the rebel and the Renaissance man. It's like we're kind of interested in things that are masculine and manly, but also like things that are also poetic or things that are beautiful. And that's what that site and what your Tumblr and the book and everything encapsulates. I want to go through some of the rules you have in there because that's the most fun part about it.
Well,
the rules.
I was still a young guy. I mean, I didn't want to come off too nerdy and be like, here are all my etiquette rules. I mean, for every rule about like how to set a table, you got to have a photo of Mick Jagger, or like
for sure.
that was also part of the point is like, this shouldn't be so deadly serious. Like you can be a gentleman and still dig glam rock. You know what I mean?
For sure.
You can want to dress like Cary Grant, but still collect Sex Pistols records. Yeah. Like one of the worst things that's happened since then is like this fracturing of like, I mean, you guys obviously know. I mean, there was definitely this kind of like pro men movement and this kind of Mad Men era nostalgia. But the worst thing that happened is people using that as some kind of excuse to like all of a sudden become like 1950s dudes and like be all conservative and all that stuff. I mean, the point of my blog was to be like, hey, you can be like a young hip guy and not dress like a slob.
Yeah.
That was kind of the origin of it. I mean, obviously since then that the trends have kind of come and gone, and now people are in sweatpants and I've got a beard and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you gotta. It's high low, man. It's all about high low.
Yeah.
You gotta keep the mix.
Exactly.
I liked how so many of the rules are. I mean, they're just about intentional living. They're about like being intentional about like what it is you're putting out there, how you're presenting yourself, not in a like pretentious way, but just knowing who you are and what you represent, what you want to do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, owning it a little bit. I spent a lot of time in my youth trying out a lot of different haircuts and looks and images and identities, never quite sure what was going to fit. And so a lot of this was kind of being like, all right, I think I'm getting there closer to the person I think I want to be.
Totally.
And so, but I always kind of wanted to make sure there was still a little element of uncertainty, like I don't know, let's see if this sticks. I'll try to make my kid do this, but
well, let's get, what are a couple of your favorite rules from the book? Did any pop in your head?
It's been so many years. I could probably just open to it and
you got it in front of you.
You guys pick.
All right. What I like is that like there are, like Eric said, there's a lot of intentional living kind of nuggets, and some really funny ones. And what I like is that they're so short.
I'll tell you which ones always got people fired up.
Okay.
The ones that kind of stuck out at the beginning. Some of them even sound dated now or even cliche. But I remember at the very beginning, people got really mad when I said, men should never wear sandals ever or something like that.
Well,
this
now
was
you live
when
in the desert, though, right? How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, now it's a different story because I live out in the desert. But back then, this was kind of a cargo shorts era, cargo shorts and flip flops era. So that stood out. All of a sudden, people were like, "Oh my God, what's he saying? I can't ever wear my Tevas again." And people in California seemed to get really mad when I said you shouldn't jog shirtless. I used to get all these emails from California dudes being like, "Dude, you have no idea."
Yeah, it's the only way I can get my tan on, or whatever.
And then, of course, 2009. I remember one of the very first rules was never trust. I don't know, what did I say? A man with facial hair has something to hide, or something like that.
My dad always used to say that too.
Yeah, and that was like a big thing with my dad. He like never ever had a beard. Like, and I used to beg him as a kid. I'm like, I just want to see. Like, I can't grow a beard. I want to see what it looks like. And he was like, I mean, I don't know. It was one of these guys who shaves on the weekend. But so that was one of the early rules, and it was funny because it truly predated like the big beard renaissance. Like, and so now that rule seems even like weirder and more antiquated because like you're hard pressed to even find someone who doesn't have a beard. But at the time, I remember people were like, "Whoa, that's so brave to like take a stand against facial hair." But it was mostly like I remember thinking it was mostly a stand against like shitty goatees and stuff, you know?
Yeah, like the old 90s goatees.
Do you think maybe that rule had a hand in sparking the whole beard renaissance, just as a rebellion to what you were putting out there? Yeah, you might have been far more influential than you think.
Yeah, always have to stay one step ahead of the mainstream, and as I took over the mainstream, they jumped ahead. I don't know.
Well, I've got I wrote down a couple here that I liked that I pulled out from the book that I feel like haven't been said on some podcasts and stuff you talked about before. One that I like is it's really funny but true. If the teacher forgets to assign homework, keep quiet.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, some of these rules are not just for the the nerds in the front row. This is just in case your kid also happens to be a middling C student, which is, by definition, the majority of us. Actually means average. Yeah. So let's not all pretend that we're all exceptional. Or that middling C student, you need all the help you can get. So yeah.
Sure. I liked the where is it? Oh, if the maitre d' mistakes you for someone famous, there's no rush to correct him.
When I was a kid, my dad's big move. We grew up in Washington D.C. and my dad, he was in real estate. He was just like your typical kind of businessman, but he did have a certain swagger. So when we would go to restaurants, like, they would always just assume that he was like a senator or something. He had like silver hair. He always had the blue blazer. He just had that look. And like, I can't even tell you how many times we went into restaurants and the little like hostess would be like, "Oh, good evening, sir." And he'd be like, and he'd have to keep the shades on for a few seconds as you come in the restaurant. He just, and so many times people would come over and be like, "I'm sorry, are you Sonny Jurgensen, or are you Senator Graham or something?" And he would just be like, "Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. How are you?" He just thought, "Hey, you know what? You gotta roll with it. Any advantage you're given in life, just take it."
Yeah. It happens to me all the time in LA. People think I'm Seth Rogen. And so I don't ever like correct them, like, because people, they figure it out quickly, but because Seth Rogen is like a foot shorter than me, but they're always like, "You even sound like him, man." I'm like, "Yeah, all right. Well,
that's good. Next time it happens, see if you can't swing a picture deal."
Yeah,
and then
yeah, I should totally see like if they could find out what their Instagram is and see if they post a picture of me. Met Seth Rogen today. That'd be hilarious. One thing I like too is like a T-shirt is neither a philosophy nor an advertisement. It's a shirt. Wear it plain. I enjoy that so much. The thing is, I get so many T-shirts as gifts, like at Christmas and birthdays. Like, oh, you like this band or you like this movie?
Yeah.
Here's a T-shirt.
No.
And I'm like,
I know.
I never
They're
wear it
literally
out of the house.
Old T-shirts are like the scourge of the '90s. They're like whole villages in Africa of people wearing like Soundgarden shirts and like Citibank Fun Run shirts and shit like that.
Or like the
I'm telling
football
you.
teams that lost in the Super Bowl. Like,
yeah.
you got to ship all
There's
those
so
shirts
many
somewhere.
Buffalo Bills Super Bowl
It's
championships.
like, I remember like looking in my drawer one day and being like, what in God's name am I doing with so many shirts? And they all have some message on them. I'm like, no one's paying me to advertise this shitty band or whatever. Anyway, so I think at some point in around the turn of the millennium, all T-shirts got purged and replaced with white Fruit of the Loom, which are still in the rotation, although have been upgraded a bit. I think I've upgraded to some plain white J. Crews and whatever. I still don't like to wear shit on my T-shirt.
Yeah, I'll save those T-shirts for working out or for sleeping in now. Like or like when I'm hanging around the house. Like, I don't like to. I don't know.
And also, a lot of the dressing rules, you gotta remember. Like, I mean, you put them all together, and it's like in total is probably pretty ridiculous. You might as well like live in a Hollywood costume shop or something.
Yeah.
But it's aspirational, right? So like, if you want to kind of live a certain life, like it's kind of fun to just force yourself to say, oh, there goes all my shirts and underwear and all being replaced by like 50s white shirts and boxers, or there go all my jeans have just been replaced by like one pair of khakis. And so like clothes are the one thing that you can do where you can kind of force your own hand. If you are brave enough to throw it all in the bin or take it all to the Salvation Army and then just see what you're left with. Oh shit, it's only white shirts and blue knit ties. Like, that's good. Good.
Less decisions. Let's see. One that I really liked was identify your most commonly used word or phrase and eliminate it, which I feel like that would be a good lesson for all of us on this podcast. Because when you listen it back, you're like, oh man, I say that all the time.
I know. It must be painful for you guys to have to listen to your podcast and be like, oh my God, I'm still saying that. Or I can't even listen to myself.
I told myself I was going to stop doing that 5 episodes ago. I'm still doing it.
I know. I do have to remind myself of that rule all the time. A lot of these rules have kind of, made it into the wastebasket of time, but some of them stand up, and that is one of them. I'm always like, am I really still saying absurd? Or there's a lot of words I say a lot.
Literally, a lot of people
literally.
do that.
Yeah. It's another one that people use a lot is amazing.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's amazing.
Awesome.
I don't think everything's amazing. Very, very little amazes me, to be honest. Like practically nothing amazes me.
Yeah.
I saw some pictures of Saturn that were actually amazing,
Yeah.
but nothing of this Earth amazes me in the sense. So that word really should be purged.
Now, this is a good one for Californians. Don't personalize your license plates. I feel like that is an epidemic in this city. Is in Los Angeles is vanity plates on every
It's
car.
always the guy cutting you off on the freeway too.
And it's funny that the first person to call me out on that one was my mother-in-law, because she had just gotten some personalized license plate.
Oh no!
and I'd like literally got married like a week before or something. She was like, "So you don't like license plates?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." She's like, RN, nurse, pilot, shamrock, like her whole identity in eight digits or whatever.
I was gonna say it was probably something really sweet, like I love my son-in-law or something.
Totally. And that's so funny. That's totally me talking shit too, because I've never actually owned a car, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe if I did have a car, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna get a license plate with my name on it."
Let's.
You had one here I thought was a lot of fun. There's one perfect way to cook bacon. Find it.
That's a good one. That's good.
Some of these I forgot. That is good. Yeah, because it does take you a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's got
Sure.
their way. I'm still.
Well, and I
figuring
love the adventurous spirit behind it too.
Yeah.
Well, also, every dude blogger on the planet's going to tell you, I know the best way to make bacon.
Right.
And it's funny because, of course, there's no perfect way to make bacon. Like, we all like bacon different ways. So just fucking do your own thing, man. Make your own bacon. Why was everyone so obsessed with bacon for a while? Are people still obsessed with bacon?
I don't know. I feel like it was a big thing, like maybe a few years ago, but I don't know.
I feel like there's still a small subset that'll like get real up in arms if you say something about their favorite meat.
Drew's still like really obsessed with like smoking meats and stuff. I feel like that was like, like there was the main like Reformation religious men's movement, and then there were these like offshoot churches. They were like the meat smoking group. They were like the beard grooming group. They were like the vintage bicycle group. Everybody kind of splintered, but you still had that kind of that meat group. I think they're still out there.
So since you've written this book, you've also come out with one for a daughter, and you've had a son and a daughter, right? Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Funny how it works. I mean, I wrote the first. We did the rules for My Unborn Son, and then I actually had a son, and a couple of years went by, which is crazy. And then I had a daughter, and then my publisher must have been running out of ideas because I get this call out of the blue that's like, hey, aren't you the guy that wrote the son book? Yeah. They're like, would you do a daughter one? So I mean, I'm kind of a freelancer, everything by trade anyway. So I'm never one to turn down a gig.
Yeah.
The second book was fun to write because I had a daughter. My wife was on board with me writing it, and I didn't want to do it for a while just because. It was just such a one-off fun project to begin with, and I didn't. It's not like I wanted to like franchise this, and I didn't want to make it a business. But once I'd had a daughter, I realized, it'd be fun if she had her own too, and so I kind of retrofitted a blog to go with it. But I realized that was false. It didn't. The first book had like a natural progression. The second one, I just wrote it as a book straight up, and then kind of put some stuff online just because. You figure people are going to Google you and want to find something.
Yeah.
But that one, and I was afraid that I wouldn't have the content, and I thought I was tapped out, or I thought that my biggest problem was I thought, it's one thing to tell your son what to do, but in this day and age, as a dad, did I really want to write this book on telling a girl what to do?
Yeah.
That's like. Out of touch best and misogynist at worst. So I had to be really careful about how I kind of framed it.
Yeah.
It's not like I was going to write make sure the coffee for your boss is hot, and shit like that. Because the first book was like glamorizing the Mad Men stuff, and then the second book, go to college. I hear there's great art classes for girls. And, so I did kind of update the second book, and it became much more of like a, positive, like Supergirl, and so it might come off a little more earnest or a little cornier, like I probably couldn't be as tongue in cheek. I mean, I still think it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's definitely more like, I want my daughter to be a total badass and stuff like that. So
that's awesome.
But I still had fun writing.
With just the concept behind all those, have you had any interaction with you're kind of like a parenting expert now. So have you had any interaction with like parenting groups or child rearing experts on this?
Yeah, well, no one ever tries to claim I'm an expert. I mean, but I have sometimes been asked. I'm like, hey, I'm on Amazon.
Yeah.
I think I've written a couple things for magazines and
Yeah.
but I always preface it by saying I am not an expert. The last thing I want is like some mom blog to be like, "How dare you say that the kids played football or whatever?" You know, so
Right.
preface it by being like, "I don't know what I'm talking about at all." I think this stuff is kind of funny.
But I feel like that's actually a really healthy like mindset as a parent, because like we don't know it all. You don't have all the this figured out. And, like, these are wisdom I want to pass on to my kids, and that's a really caring thing to do.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. And actually, I thought one of the funny kind of hooks of the first book was that I was writing it before I actually had a kid.
Yeah.
You know, like I'd had the kid, and then I was like, these are all the rules we have in our house.
Right.
It was a totally different tone. You'd sound like a jackass.
Yeah.
You're like, come on. So that was part of the joke. Part of the joke was, you know, talking about making sure my kid reads a newspaper, like before I even had a kid, you know? So
right.
Also that in that way, it got me off the hook of being any type of expert, because I was just pontificating. I was just kind of, so it was like a, you know, just a dream, like a, you know, fantasy list of rules. And again, the joke that there's 1,000 rules, it was supposed to all feel very over the top.
Yeah.
Right.
But what's funny is since then, you know, because, you know, things on the internet, they strangely don't get dated, right? So,
Yeah.
so if someone finds that content now, they do, people even now still get all fired up. Every once in a while I'll get an email or something, be like, you know, this is no good, or this is outdated. Or in fact, just a couple weeks ago, some guy, I don't know, you know, some guy somewhere in middle America, and this happens every once in a while, some guy finds the blog, it's out there somewhere, it floats around on Tumblr, and he copies and pastes it onto his blog.
Oh,
you know,
no.
Fine, I don't care. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe they say like, "Oh, I found this funny stuff," or maybe they just, you know, repost it like people do. And what'll happen is like his post will like go bonkers on Facebook. Some dude like basically copied and pasted my entire book onto his Facebook page like 2 weeks ago.
Oh no.
And within a year, it had like 3 million hits on Facebook.
Holy crap.
I don't think I got more than 10,000 followers like lifetime on Tumblr, right? So this guy's like totally gone viral with my content.
Wow.
But I was watching it because someone like sent me the link, was like, "Dude, this dude's pretending to be you." And so I go and I'm looking at the comments. I'm going, Jesus, I am so glad that it's not me connected to this stuff, because Facebook is so vicious. Like Tumblr, it was all a bunch of like 25-year-old like hipsters and teenagers and shit, and no one was giving each other a hard time. It was a very positive, kind of supportive community, you know, back before Tumblr was selling ads, shit like that. But the people on Facebook were ripping this guy. They were like, "This is sexist. This is bullshit. You don't know anything about parenting," you know. And then there'd be like these crazy like Trump threads, and then there'd be these crazy football concussion threads. And I was just like, I'm so happy that my name is on this. So yeah, I mean, no, I still stay away from being called a parenting expert. Unless someone wants to pay me, and then I'll pretend like I am anything you want me to be.
There you go.
But so like, has your son? How old is your son now? By the way, is that okay to say on the air? Or?
He's 9.
9? Oh wow! So he's old enough to have his. I don't know. I'm showing my naivety as not being a parent. Is he old enough to have read this book now? Has he read it? Yeah.
Yeah. What's his take on the rules?
Yeah.
I mean, those kids should be able to read at 9.
Yeah. I'm like, I read at 9, but you never know.
Be like, maybe I should have written a different book. No. Yeah. He's got a copy of the book. The book is dedicated to him. He won't read it. He just looks at me. He's like, "I'm not gonna read your book." I'm like, "Come on, just like one page."
Yeah.
I literally wrote it for you. And he's like, "I'll read it later." He reads like graphic novels. He's reading like weird Japanese graphic novel, like historical biographies. I'm like, "Yeah, book's probably not really your cup of tea.
Well, I think he'll appreciate it when he gets older, when he's in college or something, and trying to find himself. He'll like, oh, this is kind of cool that my dad did this.
He'll have his cats in the cradle moment when like he hasn't talked to me in 20 years and like he digs it out and it blows the dust off it. And he's like, my dad cared about me. But people always told me from the very beginning, and they're exactly right. They're like, you realize that by writing this book, you are going to create a son exactly opposite of this book.
It's true. It's like the youth pastor or the pastor's teenager, right? It's like they always do their opposite.
It's the preacher's daughter is the rebel.
Yeah, exactly.
That's as hard as you try to go one way, the kids you zig, they're going to zag. That is a fact. I should have written a book about how to become like the worst punk asshole, and then
I'm not going to do this, Dad.
That's what happens to all the rock journalists, you know?
Yeah.
They all write these books about like how to raise a kid listening to nothing but Badfinger and the New York Dolls, and then their kids like, you know, they all become like Creed fans and shit, or
Creed fans, or what's
Republicans.
I have a friend who has a theory that Imagine Dragons is the new Creed, which I think that's probably true. But Eric has an unborn son on the way. I don't yet, but
so I'm taking in all the tips I can right now.
But we wrote a couple of rules that we thought that maybe if you do another edition or if you ever want to expand upon the book, we came up with a couple of them here. So I will read a couple and see if you think they'll fit. I have one, and this comes more so from my dad. A man should never wear a clip-on anything.
That's good. That's good. I like it.
I feel like it works for ties, suspenders. I don't know, all sorts of stuff.
You're exactly right. I'm a big button guy. I'm almost over zippers. Zippers are almost out. We're almost all buttons. Everything to make life harder. You know, that's part of this vintage movement, right? It's like you got to make life harder and slower for yourself. Right. So you can be more mindful.
Yeah.
It's kind of true, but also I'm kind of poking fun. But because I'm like, my life's hard enough. I don't need like buttons on everything. But but I am all with you. I'm all with non-clip on anything. I remember my dad teaching me how to tie a tie when I was in first grade.
Oh wow, that's early.
And you know how you learn how to tie a bow tie? On your thigh.
Oh really? I learned it. When I learned that was YouTube was around, and I just found a video.
Well, back in the Stone Age, you just tie it around your thigh, and then you can watch.
Oh wow,
that's the trick.
That's interesting. I got to remember that. Another one I had is always curve the bill of your baseball cap.
I like it. All right.
I don't know. I feel like some of those are. I don't know. The flat billed cap thing. I feel like if you're over the age of 12, you just look like an ass. But I don't know.
I think you're onto something here. I think this can fall into the category of always distress your own shit.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If you're gonna have a beat up baseball cap, don't buy it that way from Lids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. Eric, you had one too, didn't you? Did you?
It was just get at least 5 people in your life who know your whole story. I think so many people it's so fragmented. This person kind of knows this about me. This person knows this, but who really knows the whole deal?
That is a really good one. In fact, I have thought about this a lot recently. I think it's really important to write your own eulogy and then give it to people before you die. Because, you in this day and age, so in the old days, newspapers actually, yes, they reported some news, but a good portion of the newspaper was actually like a public record of very personal things. Yeah. So you would put your marriage in there. If your business was sold or you had a merger, it would be covered in your local newspaper. Walker Lamond was just elected president of the Lions Club, or the Masons are meeting this weekend. And so you can actually probably get more information about your grandparents by Googling old newspapers than you would about yourself and your friends, because nowadays, basically, we're responsible for our own biographies.
Yeah.
And, so, you can use social media, and that might be good. But if you want to, finesse and curate that a little bit, I highly recommend selecting 5 close friends and then handing them a very nice eulogy of yourself and saying, when I go, this is how I would like to be remembered. Or at the very least, give them a resume and say, I'll tell you right now, when you die, no one that you know is going to remember what the hell you did at your job.
It's true.
And you may have your job for 50 years, and you will be lucky to find anyone who knew what the hell you did there. I mean, it's true. Unless you're the president of Amazon or something, no one's going to be like, he was a really good deputy head of HR at that accounting firm. But these are the facts of your life. You got to keep track of them.
It's
so
true.
Totally.
I have a couple more here, and you'll see if these can work too. I got try heroin at least once, so you know what you're saying no to. But that one actually doesn't sound as good when I read it out loud because it ends in a preposition. So, and then
can we fake it with sweet and low and water and what we used to do with all of our indie movies back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Like every indie movie in the 90s had to have a shoot up scene.
Oh yeah.
So we all got really good at bending spoons and boiling water and sugar in a spoon.
Yeah, I remember that in film
Jordan,
school.
As your addiction therapist, I'm going to tell you that that's a bad idea.
All right, that's probably we should. And I got another one here. When selecting a college, pick a state school because higher education is a racket perpetuated by the United States government in bed with the student loan companies. And when you graduate, you probably won't be able to find a job anyway. At least not in this economy. On second thought, you're better off going to a trade school or starting a blog or something. So that might not fit on the small book pages, though. But I don't know.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I endorse, and I think that should be on the cover.
Yeah, be on the back of the book.
It's perfect. I agree. I go one step further and say all colleges are a racket. Skip it all. Join the Merchant Marines. See the world, and then come back and be a bartender.
I wanted to tell you meant like what I like about your book too is, it seems like you have a background in being interested in punk rock and stuff, which is funny because Eric and I grew up in that world. We both played in punk bands in high school and stuff. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. And then I looked up on, because you being a TV producer, looked up on your IMDb, and I saw a New York Dolls documentary on there. Can we talk about that a little bit? I mean, that's super interesting to me.
Oh yeah, this is like another lifetime ago. But I did. I mean, I'm a huge music fan. I'm a music nerd. I mean, but I'm no expert. I never played in a band. I don't have any punk bona fides. Geez, my wife's a lot cooler than I am. She used to go to like No Ages shows and watch Fugazi in DC and stuff.
Oh wow!
But
awesome.
I just grew up loving rock and roll. So I was like, I was a classic rock guy, and then I was a Stones guy, and then I did the natural progression. This is like you can like track everyone's like career through college and coffee houses in New York and stuff. So I went Stones and Velvet Underground, and then I found the Stooges, and then. But I mean, I love all of it. I love all of it. But I have always loved the New York Dolls. They were always I just loved the mix of high-low. I loved that they were fun, but raw. Like they weren't, I was like never a big Clash fan. Like I get it. The Clash is awesome.
Yeah.
They're amazing. I know all the words. I rock out to it all the time. But like, I never connected as well to like, I guess the anger of it because, who am I? I wasn't some like blue class bloke from Birmingham, I was just, so the Dolls I liked because I loved the theatrics of it. I was much more of like a Jagger, rock and roll should be fun thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, for short, I wanted to make movies. I moved to New York. I realized it was too expensive to make movies. So I thought maybe I could make documentaries. So I, made a list of my favorite documentary filmmakers, and it consisted of like 2. And the top was D.A. Pennebaker, because he made my favorite movie, which was Don't Look Back, about Dylan.
That's great.
And lo and behold, on the back of the DVD, it said his office was up on 92nd Street. So I hopped on a subway and I knocked on his door, and he answered. And I said, "Can I work for you?" And he goes, "Well, there's a broom right over there. Sure." So I started sweeping the basement and kind of organizing all of his old films. And he's just the most amazing guy in the world. And he really became kind of my mentor. And I kind of I worked for him for a few years, and eventually got to the point where we'd sit at the Steenbeck together and look at old footage of Dylan, and he let me cut a movie. And anyway, so he really introduced me to music documentaries and how to make cool music films. And so about the same time, I'm living downtown, and I noticed that David Johansen is playing a gig at the Bottom Line, which is this old rock club down in Greenwich Village, which is no longer there. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. Like David Johansen, New York Dolls, Buster Poindexter. It's like to me, it was like if Mick Jagger was playing a solo show at a club for 50 people and no one was there.
Yeah.
Like that level of God to me. So I went down there, and literally there was like 6 people in the audience, and he's playing the blues with an old blues outfit he played with for a while, the Harry Smiths. And then he'd play there every couple of weeks, and I used to just go to his shows. And then he would play at this place called Chicago Blues, and he would just play with these old guys. And he'd play a bunch of old doll stuff, a bunch of his old solo stuff. And literally there'd be like 10 people in the audience, and I couldn't even believe it. So eventually I got the nerve to just walk up to him and say, "Hey, would you mind if I brought a camera to one of these shows and filmed your concert? Because this is a shame that, this is great stuff." So in like typical David Joe man, he was like, "Sure." What do you want to film me for? Type of thing. He's like, "Just tell me this. Are you a fan or are you a filmmaker?" And I was like, "Honestly, I'm a fan." He's like, "Good answer." So, he didn't want some artsy fartsy poncy guy like trying to like make a film.
Yeah.
But I just was like wanted to like record it for posterity. Anyway, so I ended up going down and filming. It was actually David Joe Hansen and Harry Smith's last show, and it was the last concert at the Bottom Line. So we filmed this really traditional concert film, but he let me hang out backstage, and and it was great. And then it was just kind of me teaching myself how to make a concert film. And then a few months later, I get a call from David Joe, and he's like, "Walker." I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "It's David Johansen." And I'm like, "Holy shit, okay." He's like, "We're getting the band back together." And he had gotten a call from Morrissey to get the Dolls back together, because Morrissey was curating this show out in London.
Oh, wow.
And this like summer concert series. And he begged David Joe and all the guys, Sylvain and Arthur Kane, who was still alive at the time, the bassist. He begged them to get the Dolls back together. So they did it. They kind of got together. They hadn't seen each other in like 20 years. And so David calls and he's like, "Look, I don't want just anybody in there." He's like, "But I trust you. We met." So he let me come with a camera, and I got to film like them doing a few rehearsals. We flew out to London. We filmed that show. And then, and I didn't have the production. I didn't have the money to like make a big concert film out there. Actually, Morrissey did his own, but he let me hang out backstage and just kind of document it, almost more for him. But it was unbelievable. I mean, it was so much fun. And then sadly, Arthur Kane died, and I thought that would be the end of that. But as it turns out, they really loved playing together. And so then he calls me up again, and he says, "Hey, we're going to go cut a record. We're going to do it right here in Manhattan." So I went up to the studio, and he let me hang out in the studio for a month while they recorded their reunion record.
Oh, wow.
And it was awesome. I mean, it was just like, I came from the Pennebaker school, which is just don't hang lights, hang out in the corner with a camera, and just hope something cool happens. And that's all I did. And to me, just watching these incredible guys just make music and have fun was all I needed. Like I wasn't out to make one of these behind the musics or something like that. So that was it. So that was just me filming the dolls in the studio. It was like my teenage dream. And David Johansen's literally like the funniest, wittiest guy in rock and roll. So just hanging out with him was like incredible. It was so much fun. And plus they were having guys in and out of the studio. I mean, so like, Michael Stipe walks in one day and sings some vocals and,
cool.
God, who else? BB King came in one night, and I mean, it's like so
That's
random.
crazy.
I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. So that was my little experience making rock and roll films. My almost famous summer.
That's so cool. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun. I've done some, just being a filmmaker too, of shooting my friends' bands and stuff, and like just thinking like, oh man, it'd be so cool to do like a real band, hang out and be like a fly on the wall with one of the greats. So
yeah, but I got to tell you, I've filmed a lot of music, and the more famous they get, the more boring the movie is.
yeah, it's true.
No, there's so much drama and energy in watching amateurs trying to be a band. I mean, sometimes it's painful, but most of the time, plus the access is better. It's fun. I mean, look, we all want to get a famous person in the lens. I mean, that's, Andy Warhol's famous quote. Someone asked him, "What's your definition of a good picture?" And he said, "In focus and of someone famous." Yes, I mean, a lot to be said for that, right? Like we all want to, in the day that Michael Stipe comes in, of course, I'm like nervous and I'm stumbling and I'm trying to get him. I want to get that great footage of Michael Stipe. And I realized like Michael Stipe in a glass booth is not exciting, but watching David Johansen and Sylvain listen to him record at the control booth was way cooler. Yeah. Because like it's amazing. I remember like there's this great moment where Michael Stipe was the one who was nervous because David Johansen was like his idol. He grew up listening to the Dolls. Yeah. So like watch Michael Stipe be like, "Was that okay? Was that what you wanted?" And having David Joe be like, "Yeah, it was all right. Maybe we're gonna cut that part." Or like it was brilliant. It was so much fun. So
he sounds like a New York construction worker.
Yeah.
That impression.
I'm telling you, they should put David Johansen and Cyndi Lauper in a museum and just be like, "This is the old New York accent." I think they're both from Staten Island, and they both have that like. I mean, Cyndi Lauper's got that like, "Oh sure," she sounds like she's on Honeymooners or something.
Yeah, like she's like a character from Everybody Loves Raymond. That's awesome. I want to see. Can I find that anywhere online, or is that hard?
Well, what we did was the New York Dolls one. They included it in the record.
Oh, awesome!
So as DVD in the record, which was fun, great for me. So if you find that original pressing of the CD, probably get it on eBay, you'll find the film. But I don't think they ever sold the film separately.
Okay.
Another guy, a good filmmaker too. I forget his name. I shouldn't. That's shitty of me. But he made a great documentary just about Arthur Kane, the bassist for the Dolls. It was called New York Doll. It was a great documentary. I think he even played it at Sundance because Arthur Kane had he'd gotten screwed up on drugs and then he got sober and he became a Mormon. And he was living out in Utah in working in the library of the big Mormon tabernacle. And
in full drag.
And the filmmaker found him and then basically filmed him all the way until he joined the Dolls again. And it was a really beautiful film. And then Arthur randomly died a week after the concert. It was so bizarre.
Wow.
Yeah, he had I guess he had cancer, but he didn't even know it.
Oh.
Anyway, that's a real movie. Mine's much more of just like a behind the scenes in the studio fun. But if you like Pennybaker movies where it's just like, mostly out of focus and low light and rock and roll, that's what it is.
Yeah. That's my cup of tea. I'll see if I could get a copy on eBay. Well, sorry for taking up so much of your time. I mean, I know you're like 7 hours ahead of us, right? So
This is great. This is great fun. I love talking about myself.
yeah. Well, thanks for doing this. And where can people find you if they want to find out more of your stuff?
I mean, Walker Lamond, if you can remember my name, will take you to. It'll take you to Amazon to buy these books. It'll probably take you to the old Tumblr site. You'll find all sorts of stuff. But Rules for My Unborn Son is still in bookstores. You know, it's cool. A lot of the independent bookstores and shops are the ones that have kept it on the shelves, which is great. And then there's this other one called Rules for My Newborn Daughter. Both out there, and I got to tell you, they still make great gifts for new parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I mean, you guys
He's
because
got
of that age, all your friends are having babies and stuff. So,
Eric, you got a baby shower coming up, don't you?
Yeah, every time you go to a baby shower, you just pull one off the stack, and there you go.
That's awesome.
That's all I'll do. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, man, and we got to have you come back on when you're working on other stuff. This has been fun.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, guys. I'd be happy to. Yeah, pick a topic. I'm sure I can become an expert in a matter of minutes.
Hey, this part of the show is brought to you by Phoenix Shaving. If you like to shave, and you are a man or a woman, I mean, some women are hairy. That's all right. That's okay. No judgment. But if you're a guy that likes to shave and appreciates the finer things in life, go to gentlemanscofflaw.com/shave. That link helps support the show, and you could check out some of Douglas Smythe's amazing shaving soaps, aftershave colognes. You'll be blown away at all the stuff he has. Scents for days. He is like the Walter White of artisan soap making. He's got this lab basically there in Phoenix, Arizona, where he creates his soaps and he cures them. It's an independent business. You're not giving your money to all those guys that are ripping everybody off with razors. Right now, you can get some wet shaving starter packs. So it has everything you need to get started wet shaving. You know, you can get sets that have the safety razor, the brush, the soap, the aftershave, tons of great scents to pick from. I've mentioned before, one of my favorites is Tombstone. Also, they have Sundown, which is like a classic barbershop scent. They've got Cavendish, which smells like pipe tobacco, which is amazing. I tell you, I've been using the stuff and I don't get any razor burn or razor bumps anymore. This stuff is amazing, especially the aftershave. It just removes all irritation, bumps, redness. It's like I've never looked so dapper in my life, and that's thanks to Phoenix Shaving. So go to gentlemanscofflaw.com/shave and stop being a slave to the cartridge razor shave. All right. That was a fun interview with Walker. I feel like we were kindred spirits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting fellow. And during the break, we talked a little bit. He'd like to come back on and talk about music and other stuff. Like maybe he'll be a guest host in the rotation. Who knows?
Yeah, he's talking about his punk rock days and filmmaking. It was cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You know what time it is? It's time to announce the winner. It's time
What are we talking about?
It's time to announce the winner of this week's Phoenix Aftershave giveaway. All right, let's get a drum roll. And the winner of the first due aftershave cologne giveaway. This is a terrible drum roll. You guys just
that was the best one yet. Come on.
All right. So the winner is Oilfield Pipe Guy. You are the winner of first due aftershave and giveaway from Phoenix Shaving. And next week we are giving away a bottle of Vetiver Planet, which is supposed to smell like vetiver. Which I don't know if you smell vetiver. It's kind of a manly kind of cedary. Is that right? Kind of cedary kind of smell. Am I off with that? Do you guys know what vetiver is?
No, I've never heard the word in my life.
I just know that.
I suspect you're making it up.
Well, my mom's really into essential oils, and whenever she diffuses that, it makes me think of like woodsy stuff. So I could be wrong. Douglas, correct me if I'm wrong. But Douglas is the guy that puts together and blends all these fine.
He's the
aftershaves.
soap maker.
He's the soap maker.
That'd be an awesome movie.
Yeah, that would be. You gotta do that. All right, and John, if people want to support the show, how can they do that?
Well, our merchandise shop has some awesome new additions.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if people can handle this, but we have coasters.
Oh yeah, coasters.
And
Posters
For people that respect
coasters,
wood.
Exactly, and they match well with the steins, I guess you could call them.
The steins,
drinking
yeah.
glass.
Steins. Whoa.
Cups to drink.
I guess they're
with.
pint glasses. They're probably not steins, though, right?
And we're still working on that wooden cereal bowl.
Yeah, that's not
Cereal
gonna
bowls. Whoa.
Why do they have to be wooden? This is going to be a manufacturing nightmare.
I respect wood too.
There you go. And everything we mentioned on the show could always be found in the show notes in the crotch bar of the podcast description. Eric, you are a gentleman and a scofflaw, my friend.
Thank you. You are a gentleman and a scofflaw.
Oh, thank you. John, you are a gentleman and a scofflaw, but you are not my friend.
Ooh, controversy.
Uh-oh.
Ouch.
Do I need to do some group therapy here?
Uh-oh. This might be a group session.
We need an intervention.
We need an
It's about
intervention.
to happen.
Yeah. Right before you get into your other sessions, Eric's actually got to go to work after this. Well, we're
Back
just
to
going to be the
work.
losers hanging around drinking in the afternoon. All right. You guys have a great week.
This has been the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcatcher. Visit us on the interwebs at gentlemanscofflaw.com.
Captain says his ice on the river. We ain't getting home if we don't break through. So damn cold, I can't help but shiver. Rise and shine, we got work to do. Hey!